So, I mean, what did you see the charging documents? What did they say? How did they make the case that this was malicious voyeurism? Is it running?
Absolutely.
Okay.
I have not seen, as of today, I have not seen any of the charging documents. I haven't gotten any discovery. I have nothing.
Have you been arraigned?
I've been arraigned, yeah, but they
Okay,
didn't
but
provide
they
any
didn't give you
documents.
charging documents, so they arraigned
No,
you?
they did not provide me with any charging documents.
Okay, that's weird.
Yeah, they did
Yeah.
not provide me with anything because they're going to. Apparently, the state's attorney in the New London Judicial District says that there is a conflict or an appearance of a conflict, and the chief state's attorney wants to transfer the case to a different judicial district. So I don't even know if he's going to be handling the state's attorney. He talked to me without my attorney present. He said, "Hey, Mr. Reyes, nice to meet you. Thank you for always being so civil." Shook my hand, said, "Good luck with everything." Kind of like he knew, this is before I knew he was going to ask for the transfer to a different district for this bias, and he was just like, now it makes sense. He was like, "Good luck with everything." I'm like, "Good luck." I'm like, "What do you
Where did he
mean?"
pass you off to?
We don't know that yet either. It's still being determined on what judicial district. You have the Danbury Judicial District, Hartford, New London, Bridgeport.
Fairfield?
Yeah, Fairfield.
Yeah.
There's a lot of different districts.
Sure.
So
and why do you think he wants to do that?
he says that there's an appearance of a bias, a professional bias. He says, I guess because the sergeant in question, former Sergeant Brian Fahey, was a New London police officer.
Okay. And so
I
he
don't.
worked with the prosecutor in that.
I assume, but how many times do prosecutors?
very weird.
Right. I mean, we've seen prosecutors work with police, and they can prosecute cases that are against police. They do it all the time. Just because you work in the government doesn't mean that it's a bias. I was told through sources that the state's attorney, Paul Narducci of the New London Judicial District, it's not a professional appearance of a bias, that he is actually grew up with this sergeant. He said in court a professional appearance of bias, but I'm told that they played baseball together, that they actually grew up together. So that might be it at the end of the day.
So, a question now.
Yes.
So, first of all, let me ask you, people who had watched your video and saw you bring the big video screen, you walk up to his porch, and would say you were going too far. Why were you doing this? So why did you go to that extreme length? And do you feel like that was too much? Or if people push back and say you're harassing this guy, what would you say to them?
So my answer to that would be, the reason why I was there is because of the excessive amount of overtime. I have calculated that he has earned approximately $85,000 on average the last 5 years of his employment, when his salary is about $112,000. So he's earning a good portion of his base salary in overtime. And even more concerning is that he's a desk sergeant, so he handles pistol permits. So to my knowledge, the pistol permit section is only open from 9 to 4. So I don't know how he would acquire overtime unless he's doing another detail. Those are things I'm still investigating, but I thought that was something worth investigating. I did what journalists have been doing for decades, and that's going to public officials' homes and knocking on their door and asking for comment. I immediately stepped off of the door, the porch. I knocked on the door, stepped off of the porch. I was a good 15, 20 feet away from his front door. Tried to ask him the question. He told me to leave, and I left. So for people with criticisms, they can criticize the form of journalism, but you would have to criticize every other journalist that went to someone's home to ask them a question.
Now, the numbers you got, the 80,000, and you said that's for 10 years?
85,000 is the average number for the last 5 years.
Did they give you a breakdown in hours? So in other words, he was working 8 hours regular time, 5 hours of overtime every day. Did they give you any sort of details on that?
I'm still waiting on the timesheets.
Okay.
I have FOIA requested the timesheets, authorization forms, list of details he was working, and I plan on correlating that with surveillance footage to see if those line up. But no, I have no details as far as, I just know the number is 85,000 for the last 5 years. That's the average, and this year alone he's made over 100.
Wow, and so he's basically almost doubling his salary every year.
Correct,
So
almost doubling it.
That would make you conclude that he was working 8 hours of reg and maybe 5 or 6 hours a day. So this is a very busy guy.
Right. So, I mean, I did the math. He would have to work 12 hours a day every single day. And ironically enough, when I went to his residence to ask him about it, it was 3 o'clock in the afternoon and he was home.
On a work day? On a work day?
On a work day.
Okay.
On a work day.
Okay. So he comes out of his house. You're not scared?
So I was ready to leave. I was leaving, not ready to leave. I was in the process of leaving. My back, a lot of critics have said, well, you were backing up, you didn't just leave, you were backing up slowly. I actually turned my back to his residence and was leaving, and I was narrating to the camera. I was ready to go back to my billboard truck. And then I heard him come out of his house, and he said, "Get off my property." And I turned back around, and I see him with a gun in his hand, quickly approaching me. So, yeah, I was pretty scared. I was scared, more scared for the safety of my cameraman, a 20-year-old kid, no criminal record, just a college kid that I hired to hold a camera for me as a journalist, and I didn't know what he's going to do. And then he gets right in my face, you know.
Yeah. Wow. So so he had a gun, and did he ever point it at you, or was it just kind of by his side?
Yeah, so he had the gun in his hand, finger was on the trigger, and it was at his side the entire time. But it was inches from me when he's directly in my face, yelling and screaming at me to get off his property. As soon as I saw the gun, my immediate instinct was to put my hands up like this, and I said, "I'm a journalist, I'm not armed, I don't have any weapons on me." He keeps telling me, repeating over and over again, to get off my property, and I told him, "What do you think I'm doing? I am getting off your property." So I don't see the reason for such aggression.
Yeah. And you did say he spit on you. Are you still holding to that? Is that something that happened? I couldn't tell, but did he spit on you?
So he got in my face. Spittle was coming out as he's screaming at me. I didn't even mention that because in the moment, because it is what it is, he's in my face. But no, he in my face and in my mouth. I felt it in my mouth. It was the most disgusting thing I've ever experienced in my life, the most violating thing I've ever experienced in my life. It was, in the moment, I just kept being conscious. I was trying to be situationally aware that he has a gun with his finger on the trigger in his hand. And after, I was like, well, he probably did that in order to elicit a response from me so that way he could shoot me. But that's in hindsight. But in the moment, I'm just like, he has a gun. Just stay as calm as possible. He spit on me. Yeah.
So let me ask you a question. Overtime is a huge problem with police departments. Why focus on this one officer? Are there other officers that are worth work, or are you just trying to focus on one at a time? Because, as far as I was saying, from my experience, police love overtime. So why focus on this guy?
Well, that's because I received a tip from a source, particularly about this individual. We have had prior interactions in the past where he wasn't held accountable for assaulting me, breaking my camera, slamming a door on me, violating my first Fourth Amendment rights. He has never been held accountable by internal affairs. In my investigation, I found other victims that he has used excessive force against on video. I've seen the video. These victims are scared to come forward because they're scared of the retaliation they might face if they do come forward and show their video on my channel. But this individual in particular, I got the tip and I followed the tip. I understand that generally overtime is a problem in law enforcement across the country, but I'm only one man. I'm a one-man operation. I can only focus my attention on so many things at one time, and I got a tip and I decided to follow up on it.
So how long have you been working on this particular story with this particular cop?
I would say about a month before the incident, I got the tip, and I was doing FOIA requests for the overtime. I looked on the website. Connecticut is actually very transparent when it comes to their salaries. There's the comptroller website where you can go look at everything, and you see the amount of overtime for their entire career. And I did the average, and it was $85,000 a year for the last 5 years straight.
So that's almost $500,000 in taxpayer money.
Right, $500,000 in taxpayer money almost, and in overtime for a desk sergeant. Again, I thought that was a legitimate avenue for me to pursue and a legitimate public concern that people would want to know about, the taxpayers of Connecticut.
So what have you been charged with as a result of this particular encounter, let's say?
Yeah, so after he spit in my face and mouth, I got off the property. He actually came out onto the public property. He told 911, he was on the phone with 911, he told 911 that I threatened to kill him, a lie. And then he clarified, after I was like, "You're lying." He says, "Online, you threatened to kill me online." And let me be very clear, I've never threatened to kill him or anyone online or in person. I've never done that. That was a lie. I believe, again, that was more to elicit a response from law enforcement or excuse his behavior if he was going to use that weapon to try and paint himself as the victim. I'm protecting myself and my family. That's what he said. My home and my family. It just, again, doesn't really make a lot of sense. his home and his family were in the opposite direction. So I don't know why he's coming towards me if he wants to protect them. It doesn't make any logical sense. The town of Groton Police Department arrived, who their police chief, and this is important, their police chief was a Connecticut State Trooper for 22 years before he became the police chief. So he's worked with Fahey. I don't know if they know each other. I'm still looking into that. So the town of Groton Police Department did arrive, and they were very aggressive towards me. I tried to tell them, hey, I knocked on the door. Well, you can't knock on the door. I can knock on the door. Well, it sounds like you weren't leaving. I just told you I immediately left. You're not listening to me. Like, they were trying already to paint a narrative that didn't happen. I showed them the video of what happened on the scene to a supervising officer, one of the sergeants there. He saw the video. He saw that he spit on me, so I left immediately. He said, well, you kind of knew this was going to happen, right? Kind of victim blaming, like, you wore that skirt to the bar and that's why this happened to you. And I was explaining to him, why are you blaming the victim? You just saw what happened. I want him arrested. And I kept pushing for charges. He's mentioning my billboard truck, which again is another First Amendment protected activity. And then I'm explaining to one of the sergeants, like, are you going to press charges? And he's like, well, assault in Connecticut doesn't include bodily fluids unless it's an officer. So I said, if I spit on you, it's against the law? He's like, yeah, it's a felony. It's a felony to spit on a law enforcement officer. But apparently a citizen or a law enforcement officer, in this case, spitting on a citizen is not.
Do you think that's fair?
No, I'm going to be, when the session is back open for the Connecticut legislature, I'm going to be advocating for the statute to be changed to include bodily fluids. But he said at most it'd be a breach of the peace. So I said, all right. Well, I'll take what I can get him for a breach of the peace. And he said, well, technically you were engaged in a breach of the peace. I knew I wasn't. I'm very familiar with that law, and I knew I wasn't. So I said, so take both of us. And he said, put your hands behind your back, and I was arrested.
And so what did they charge you with specifically?
Yeah, so I get to the police department. I was charged with felony voyeurism, criminal trespassing, felony voyeurism with malice, criminal trespassing, and breach of the peace. My bond was set, this is important, my bond was set at $10,000. My cameraman's bond was set at a no bond for a promise to appear. Sign a paper, you get out. 30, 45 minutes go by, and they come back to my cell, and they said, Mr. Reyes, there's a lot of moving parts here. We're getting some phone calls from up high, and your bond is now set at $75,000, and your cameraman set at $50,000.
And this wasn't cash bail, right? This was just regular bail?
This was a surety bond. Mine, because it was over $50,000, had to be a surety bond. I had to call a bail bondsman.
So that would have cost you like $7,500, right?
Yeah, altogether it would cost me about $10,000 for myself and my cameraman.
Which that's money you don't get back.
That's correct. You do not get that money back. That is gone. I just put it on a credit card, and I just wanted to get myself and my cameraman out, especially my cameraman. He was most important to me. That's what I was thinking about.
I mean, I want to ask this question later, but I got to ask you, was this worth it for you? I mean, this is a lot of, you're facing a felony charge, and you're facing $10,000, and plus you need a lawyer. Is this become not worth it for you?
Yeah, so lawyer's fees, if this goes to trial, will probably be about $50,000 for myself and my cameraman. I am completely committed to protecting him and supporting him throughout this entire process from the very beginning. Was it worth it? I don't think that, I would say that it's worth it every single time to expose a tyrant, to expose somebody who engages in criminal behavior, a public official. He exposed himself. I don't want to go to jail. I don't want to have my freedom taken from me. My freedom is of the utmost importance to me. That's the last thing that I want to jeopardize, which is why I don't engage in criminal activity. But sometimes when you're faced with an injustice, you have to go.
Wow. I mean, that's and you are correct. Journalists do go up and knock on people's doors. So we're not exactly as, let's say, I don't want to say colorful, but as creative as you are with it. But we do that. So do you feel like you're not being treated as a journalist? Do you feel like people say, well, because he's on YouTube and he says they don't treat you as a journalist as you should be treated?
Yeah. So in all of the local media in Connecticut and other outlets on YouTube and everywhere else have covered the story, and every single time they say self-proclaimed journalists, so-called journalists, and I believe that these journalists are using that kind of rhetoric to discredit me and paint it in a different, change the narrative and say he's a so-called journalist, self-proclaimed journalist, self-proclaimed First Amendment auditor. I live in the world of reality. You might not like my form of journalism. You might not like how I engage in my journalism or what stories I investigate or how I go about investigating them, but the fact is, I am a journalist. There is no ifs, ands, or buts around it. I report on matters of public interest. I investigate matters of public interest, specifically law enforcement and the government.